I posted something and it's like a hornet's nest. It's like hitting a hornet's nest.
Yeah.
You're hanging out in the House of Sunny podcast, where it's always sunny, mostly because of your host, comedian and YouTuber, Sunny Loman. Want to know what Sunny and her friends are thinking about this week? Well, here she is, Sunny Loman.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the House of Sunny podcast. I'm here with Doug from The Rational Capitalist. What's going on, Doug?
Hello, Sunny. How are you today?
I'm good. It's been a while. I took a month off and then we were going to get started again, but I had a death in the family and I was kind of dealing with that. And it was just a lot of, not only like grieving and dealing, first the person's in the hospital and it was my dad. And then they die and then there's family drama and nothing is ever, I think everybody reacts differently to a death and things get a little weird, but
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thanks.
From everybody.
He was, maybe I'll show you guys a great picture of us. My dad, first of all, like a real American guy, you know what I mean? Like totally MAGA, and, he is the one who gave me Atlas Shrugged when I was 17 and just really kind of shaped my ideological development, I'd say.
That was good.
Yeah, in a good way. In a good way. And here we are, gosh, like 15 years ago. He took me to, he taught me how to shoot a gun, There's my dad.
Oh.
We're at the shooting range. He brought his AK, which is like this big, scary looking rifle. But what's kind of cool about it is that it's really easy to shoot. I think of it as kind of like the ladies' rifle because there's like no kick. You just shoot these ginormous bullets out of this ginormous gun. And the thing is like butter, just thoop, thoop, thoop. You're not even... No problems.
I don't think that's how the Taliban or the Russians know the AK, but
they don't think of it as a woman's gun.
May you die 1,000 deaths of a dog for saying that.
Right.
No, boy, he looks really cool, man. He looks like what's the guy's name? The cowboy guy. I always think of his name, O'Neill, whatever his name is.
O'Neill?
No.
I don't know, but there's other here. I'll share another great picture of my dad. Why not? He's the kind of guy who has this like 70s look with the stash that a lot of guys from his era had, right? So
total 70s look. Sam Elliott is who I was thinking.
Sam Elliott, yeah. I mean, he was like that, and
big stash.
My dad had this real resonant voice as well, so definitely a Sam Elliott type character. And we'd walk around and we'd see. There's my dad. We'd see people on this, like I see people on the street, and I'm like, oh my God, it's my dad. But it's just it's his type. Because he was a type. But he loved sailing. There's my dad on his boat. This is a picture of how I remember my dad, just on his boat. Loved living in Florida. Had been living in Florida since 81. So it's really been my second home because we used to go, when he had visitation, it would be with him down in Florida. And we would go down there for Christmas and we'd spend summers down there, and my brother and I. So it's really my second home. And he always had a sailboat. And we'd always go out on the sailboat, and he just a lot of really good experiences. Great guy, and really going to miss him. So I made a mistake this morning. I'm not much of a Twitter person, but I've been trying to get into it more because Facebook has gotten so boring.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so dull. And there's nothing going on Facebook. Everyone seems to be afraid to have discussions about anything. So everyone just kind of posts the most benign shit. And also Facebook is feeding me the same like 15 people over and over and over. I don't see like a real feed. And so it's really whatever those 15 people are doing is what I see. And it takes me about 20 minutes to catch up with those people. And then I'm kind of like, okay, there's nothing else going on Facebook. It just got really boring. So I've been going over to Twitter, and also the whole Elon Musk thing intrigued me. And if it could be made into a free speech hub, I think that'd be great, but I don't hold out hope.
No, I don't either.
Anyway, so I'm in a total bubble there. So I just see the people I agree with and they agree with me. And I don't have a lot of activity. I only have 1,000 followers, but if you want to follow me over there, it's at Sunny Lohman. I have like 20,000 Facebook followers and 1,000 Twitter followers. And I'm definitely posting over there more now. But this morning I made the mistake of commenting on a leftist's post. And I don't know how I got I don't know how it came up in my feed.
Twitter's colliding, two silos.
Well, now I see what people are talking about, because like they talk about how toxic Twitter is. And so far I haven't really seen it. I posted something and it's like a hornet's nest. It's like hitting a hornet's nest.
Yeah.
Zoom. I mean, it's like all of these people responding and acting like what you said is maybe like you are literally the worst person in the world.
Yeah.
And all I did was, you'll laugh because I say all I did, but obviously I realized that I was saying something sort of. So this obese teacher was on Twitter saying that a student came to her. He had skipped out of his class because he couldn't fit in a chair. And he was so embarrassed that he left class and he didn't want to go to his next class. And like, I mean, who can't help but feel something for a child who's obese, who can't fit the chair? Oh my God, how mortifying. And then this poor kid feels like he can't go to class. So he's out in the hallway and this teacher finds him out there. And I assume she's a teacher. She works for the school. And she says, lucky that he ran into another weight challenged person, like she's fat. And so she's like, lucky he ran into me and he was able to confess like what he was really feeling, because I could really relate. And then the rest of her thread is this screed about how the school needs to make bigger chairs and accommodate obese kids. And I'm like, and I just replied, I quote, I just replied on there and I said, I feel sorry for that kid. What a great opportunity for you to start a weight loss club and help the overweight kids and yourself get healthy. Obviously, that's a slam, but I really mean it. Like rather than be like, why won't the school do something about this? Why won't people enable and accommodate obesity? Especially childhood obesity, which frankly it's the same thing with this trans child stuff, like anything to do with kids. Don't enable this shit. If these kids are obese, there's a problem at home. There's a problem with food. There's a problem of neglect. There's a problem of this kid probably doesn't want to be fat. And he just doesn't really have the motivation or the wherewithal or the adult guidance and motivate, pushing you to do something about it. And like, if I were in that position, I would say, I'm going to start a weight loss club and I'm going to get like any kid that wants to join. We're going to work out for 20 minutes after school. And we're going to make an agreement and we're going to have healthy snacks and we're going to share lunches and, things like that. Like, do something about it. Help this kid fit into a normal chair. That is how it should be.
Yeah.
This poor fucking kid,
Yeah. Getting him a bigger chair.
Oh, it's fine.
It's a short-term accommodation, not a long-term solution.
It's fine that you're fat. Just get fatter and be fat and we'll just make bigger chairs, even though fat people
and we'll pretend it's healthy.
Is there a single fat person that's happy about it?
No.
There's not a single fat person that's like, I'm so glad I'm fat. Even Lizzo, for all her no,
it's pretend.
I'm a goddess or whatever. Like, she doesn't feel good. She can't exercise. She can't walk a block and feel good.
You wouldn't need to take extraordinary measures to proclaim how happy you are. If you were just happy, like if you're beautiful and healthy, do you make a video saying, look at how healthy I am and great
no one
looking
assumes
I am?
I'm unhappy because,
Actually,
but the truth is, as someone who's been chronically ill, I mean, there have been times, months that go by where I know that I'm like, this is what it feels like to be 90. And like, I can't really move around, and my body hurts, and I wake up and my body hurts, and I'm out of breath from anemia or whatever. And it's also what it's like to be fat. So I know the feeling of having a body that's not working for you and is just not healthy. And I know that more than most people. And so I really, if especially the thing about obesity that kills me is that you have a choice. You can make that choice. And I mean, kids need maybe a little more help because they don't have adult understanding of how to motivate themselves and set goals and things that they'll learn later. But kids need a little more help with lighting fire under their butts sometimes. And
health is a big part of education.
Yeah.
Like it used to be. I mean, learning, like, what are you supposed to be learning at school? Like one of the things you should be learning about is the science of health and nutrition. Of course, that's all screwed up too. There's like,
they dispute whether or not that's,
but clearly
they want to teach you how bugs are the right way to go. There'd be a class on eating bugs in today's education.
Right. High protein. But I mean, it's like bedrock knowledge that everyone knows is like smoking is bad and being really obese is really bad. I mean, that's pretty bedrock.
Yeah. Why don't we accommodate smokers? Why don't we accommodate smoker kids and just say, well, they just need a personal air filter next to their desk?
Yeah.
We don't do that because it's not healthy for them. That's why. And this isn't healthy for them either. And the thing is, it's like they're being robbed of their healthy bodies. They have a healthy body inside this fat body. And these kids are being robbed of that feeling of health, which is an amazing feeling. The mind body, when you're really connected to your body and you're really healthy and you're strong and you can do anything physically, that is an amazing feeling. And these people have youth. So they already have that on their side. Yeah. And then they should be slender. They should be encouraged to be slender. And if they can't figure it out, they need help. And shame on that fat lady for saying, we need bigger chairs. Why don't you help the kid? Like really help the kid. And then so on Twitter, I go on and say that. And oh my God, like I have people saying to me, like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah. It's a religion.
They truly think that I'm the baddie because I want the kid to be motivated to be healthy rather than accommodated for being unhealthy.
Well, that's just like saying, maybe we shouldn't burn that witch at the stake. Like going into right. a Puritan thread and saying, maybe we shouldn't burn books. What?
Yeah.
These are completely religious
Maybe
people.
They should be able to read Huck Finn and not porn. How about that?
What?
They need porn because it makes them feel...
You're a witch.
They need porn because they need to feel, accepted for their sexuality. Oh my God, these people are insane.
Sounds like witch talk to me.
It is witch talk. Why don't you drown me and see if I drown? And if I don't, then shoot me in the head. Because I'm definitely a witch.
And well, we'll get into it, but this is so par for the course, of what's going on today. Just there's two worlds right now, and you got to pick one. And I think you picked the right one, but that's the bad one.
I'm being accused of not having compassion, but I think my stance is actually the most compassionate. And I actually do have compassion for these kids. I feel really bad for a child who would be just it's almost disgusting. This idea that we should let kids just wallow in their misery.
No, here's what you're saying. Don't give the drug addict heroin. Take the heroin away.
Help the drug addict get better. Right.
Get them sober. They're saying, no, just give them a hit. What are you talking about? Give them a needle.
How can you be so uncompassionate about their addiction? What?
And the left literally does this, right? They're giving out needles and pipes and stuff. I mean, this is what literally their mindset.
It is
just ameliorate the short-term discomfort by pretending this is not a problem, so we don't have to confront someone's mental health problem, and then everything, and we'll just all be happy. We can just wish it away.
And a lot of these kids today are on antidepressants, and that could be affecting their weight. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with kids. And whatever. The other post that I commented on, every time I look at my phone now, I have 20 notifications on Twitter, like every few minutes. Like I'm literally a swarm of freaks to tell me that I'm a jerk because I want to help children. Or I want this woman to stop bitching and help the fucking kid. Stop bitching at the school and the rest of us and everybody about not enabling obesity. Well, stop. Help the kid. And then the other post that I weighed in on was the former, what's this guy? What's his title again? It's like health person, the federal health person.
Surgeon General.
That guy? Surgeon General. Is that right? Jerome Adams, 20th U.S. Surgeon General, said he forwarded an NPR story that said white adults are more than twice as likely as Black and Latino households to get sizable financial help from parents or elders, a new joint NPR poll finds. That has profound intergenerational effects. And then Jerome Adams forwarded that and said, this is something I've tried to explain to white friends, family, and colleagues for years, but is extremely difficult for them to accept. Oh, he's so brave of him to try to explain it to us white folk. Even if you never received help, knowing that you could get it if you needed it can drastically change life and financial risks and decisions. And I commented on that. It's a poor thing, not a Black thing. They're making this a Black thing.
Right.
There are white kids who don't have help and have no chance of help. There are more white kids. I mean, I'm guessing as a numbers, there's more white kids in that situation than Black kids because they're just more white kids. And are there more poor Black people as a percentage of Black people? That might be true. And that might be something to talk about. But it isn't true that a percentage, that maybe as a total population, it's just completely racial. It's like, how can I make this about race? The fact that people don't have help and that more as a percentage of population, more Black kids don't have help. But as a percentage of population, more Black kids are poor. So it's a poor thing.
If this was just an arbitrary thing, then how about, okay, Black people, just give your kids more. Of course, it has to do with wealth and wealth disparity and things like that. So it really has nothing to do with race. It has to do with why are a larger percentage of Black people poor, and that's cultural, economic, whatever. And to just assert this as and what's coming is white people should leave less. It's not like, hey, let's work on like making Black people wealthier so that they can leave more to their kids.
Yeah.
No, this is leading to what? A tax.
Like a tax, a white tax.
An estate tax.
Reparations or whatever, because if Black kids, if it really is.
Otherwise, why would you be explaining that to white people? If we're already giving money to our kids, that means we're saving and we care about our children and our posterity and so why are you explaining it
I don't
to
think
us?
it's inheritance.
Explain that to Black people.
I think it's help. Like, when you get out of high school, you have some help. You have maybe your parents pay for your car insurance,
right.
Or you have some help. I didn't get any. I got literally zero.
Same here.
And
I had to pay for everything.
I'm okay with that. It's where we were. Would it have been easier for me? I was just thinking yesterday that it would have been nice if
someone gave you money.
Yeah, right.
That would have been nice. That'd be nice for a lot of people.
Not grow up poor.
God, focus on your fucking self. Like,
right?
If you don't have rich parents, then, and like us, and you had to work to put yourself through college and everything else, go do that. And then when you're wealthy or established, then give that to your kids, give that gift to your own children, which I've been able to do. And so fuck you. Don't make this like a racial collective thing.
It's not a race thing. It's a poor thing. And even as a poor thing, so what? It's America. I mean, I know that we're having problems in America now where we're not as free and we got some big problems here that we have to fix. But 10 years ago, I would have said there's opportunity for everybody and people just need to go out and work. And I've had a job since I was 14 years old. I've been buying my own clothes, which is a part of taking care of myself since I was 14. And I don't know why that happened. I mean, I guess because what my parents were willing to afford wasn't good enough for me. I didn't like it. I didn't want JCPenney.
You didn't want
jeans.
Wranglers?
I wanted to go to Dayton's department store and buy my jeans. I wanted Guess jeans. So I had to buy them. I had to work for them. And okay, does that sound like white privilege? I went to public school. That bothers me. I went to inner city public school. Everybody can go fuck themselves. I had no more opportunity than any Black kid growing up as my neighbor. So all this stuff it bleeds bullshit to me. And it is about being poor. And it sucked being poor at times. Honestly, it wasn't that bad. I never felt like that I couldn't go out and make money. I would say the biggest issue for me in growing up poor, and you can speak to this too, is at a certain point in my life, I had to sort of shift my mindset into a different culture mindset, a richer person mindset, rather than a poor person mindset. And there are certain habits and things and a feeling of inferiority when you're poor and you're around people with money and you're around this kind of more upper class vibe. Mm-hmm. I felt inferior around those people. And it was intimidating to me. I had to kind of reset myself and go, why am I being intimidated? This is ridiculous. They're just people and they're no better than me. It's the same. But it took some kind of reprogramming for myself. And you have to do that or you'll kind of maybe always feel less than in that environment. I don't know.
The thing that bothered me about that is that the explanation to white people, if Black people have a much higher single mother, single parent household, which they do, it's like overwhelming statistic, and you have a spiral of poverty and you have lack of education and therefore you're poor and people are not able to help their children as much. Like, don't explain that to me. Explain it to Black people. And explain to them why wealth or working hard or a strong work ethic or whatever is like better for you and your family. Why are you directing this at me?
Yeah.
Directed at anyone who's not able to afford to help their kids.
Yeah. And he just saying it like matter of fact. Like I try to explain this to my white family and friends and they don't accept it. Just makes me, I'm so sick of this. I try to explain why I'm obsessed with race to my white friends and family, and they're just not accepting this racist shit. Oh, they suck, don't they? Jeez. So sick of these.
And this guy's racists. A doctor, supposedly. So why don't you explain how he worked and like what he went through to get what he has?
Right.
And pass that on. That's the solution. Not shaming other people or looking to look to me or someone else to solve the problem.
As someone who can provide for my kid, I actually worry about over providing. I think that is sometimes a real psychological hindrance. I think that kids who grow up poor have certain psychological hindrances, and kids who grow up with money, there's a danger of them being lazy and not knowing how to fail and not knowing how to pick themselves up and not having perseverance baked into their character. So it's you can have problems no matter where you are on the strata. And I know a lot of kids who inherited money adults, I should say, who inherited money, who are alcoholics and they cannot make anything of their life. They're losers and they're miserable. So it's money does not buy happiness. Okay, I want to share this other racial thing because that's fun. Let's see. So this is a funny story and it comes with a TikTok. So that's always fun. This is the most hilarious story. This guy decided it was a problem that Airbnb, that someone had put on Airbnb an opportunity to stay in what was a former slave cottage on a plantation. So it's basically an outbuilding that they've furnished and made nice, and they're renting it out on Airbnb, right? People who live in the plantation house. And this is a problem for this guy. And I'm just going to play the video.
This is not okay in the least bit. And I know there's going to be somebody that says, oh, you're looking for controversy where it doesn't exist. No, this is an 1830s slave cabin that is up on Airbnb as a bed and breakfast. How do I know that this is slave quarters other than just using my eyes and looking at it? Well, they say it in the listing. This particular structure, the Panther Burn Cabin, is an 1830s slave cabin from the Panther Burn Plantation. How is this okay in somebody's mind to rent this out, a place where human beings were kept as slaves? Rent this out as a bed and breakfast. Here it is. That's it right there. The slave quarters next to the big house. It's in Greenville, Mississippi. That's the host, Brad, the super host. But what really kills me is reviews. Memorable. Highly recommend watching the sunset. We stayed in the sharecropper cabin and ate in the main house. Enjoyed everything about our stay. The cottage, the history, the tour, the breakfast, and all was great. We stayed in the cabin and it was historic but elegant. A slave cabin is elegant. What a delightful place to step into.
How dare you refurbish a slave cabin? It's like it's a freaking building. How dare you refurbish it? First of all, and second of all, it was a sharecropper's house. So it had been a slave cabin. And then after the war, it became a sharecropper house. And then, now it's an Airbnb. Like, who cares? Who cares? It's not like they're, and I don't know what he wants the owners to do with this piece of property. Should they stage it like a slave cabin and make sure that like it's never anything? I don't like, what do you do with a building that I guess they should tear it down is what he's saying. I don't know.
Yeah, you would think that it would draw attention to the history of it and make people more aware of it.
But that's not okay.
They refurbish jails. Like my family just stayed in an insane asylum that was refurbished into a really like a gourmet restaurant.
That doesn't seem fair to insane people. That seems like, I don't know.
That's creepy as shit. But like, yeah, I guess I kind of get where he's coming from, like, hey, this is a monument to this like evil institution. And, we shouldn't just be like glossing over that. I get where the emotion comes from, but at the other hand, it's like, hey, this is almost a celebration of where we've come, and it's like a historical marker, and it's like
the only way that you keep something like that up is that you either put it in a museum so that it becomes like a staged, and I'm sure these exist,
like an exhibition.
I mean, you go down to the South, I'm sure there are plantations you visit that show what life was like and actually stage it like a slave house so you can see the conditions and so on. But this is a privately owned outbuilding of a house that people own that is an Airbnb. And so why shouldn't they rent it out and make it nice and try to make it as nice as possible? And it was a sharecropper house, which is a free person's house that they lived on while they farmed. Granted, it's a freed slave, but I mean, what do we want? Let me ask you this. What do we want?
What about like the house that OJ killed his wife at? I think they tore that house down. Like there's houses where murders take place or where like really kind of sinister things take place. I personally wouldn't want to stay in a place like that or like buy it.
A slave cabin.
If you made it, okay, so if you took OJ's place and you said, hey, we made this murder house into something really cute, like a neat bed and breakfast, and you were like the family of Nicole Simpson or something, when you feel a
Oh
little
yeah,
freaked
that's a
out by
little
that?
creepy.
Like,
Yeah.
wow, they're like kind of celebrating,
Yeah.
this creepy house because of what went on there. So
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that would definitely creep me out. You think this is similar to that, where you're
yeah, I
taking
don't
like
think it's
a
the same, but
crime. I mean, no one was murdered there, but slaves lived there. The crime isn't where they lived or the house they were in. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's not like it's a crime scene. It's part of a larger thing that happened. But
Okay, well, here's one. I mean,
do
I don't,
you
again,
do
I
you
don't
tear
think
down
it's,
the plantation houses too then and like
yeah, right.
burn
Because
the
then where do you
land?
stop? Because, yeah,
Where's the slavery start and end? I mean, the whole South got burned down because of it. So I kind of feel like I don't know what to say about that. I think it's just a building, and people did live in there freely after slavery. It was somebody's house after it was a slave house. So
yeah. Just like a
it's
plantation had slave owners and now, and
and
had
hasn't since the
enslaved people
war.
in it. Yeah.
So what is it? Is it a slave? Is it a plantation house or is it somebody's house at this point? I I don't I don't know. It's like these are older homes and so they have histories in them. If you go over to Europe and you go into an old church or an old town with an old building, I'm sure all kinds of shit happen in those places. The
Or a
older it
castle.
is, the worse shit. Yeah, I mean, you go into a castle, people were hung there, people were drawn and quartered there. What do you do? Do you just say, well, you can't turn that into an
You put a
Airbnb then?
historical marker like on every single thing all over the world, and then that's everything's
Yeah,
off limits because, like, where does the history stop?
I guess that's
Like,
what I'm saying. History is long, and all
like if
of
someone, like, if 5 years ago, let's say a guy imprisoned um a bunch of like women in some slave dungeon, and now it's like, hey, now it's a B&B. That's creepy as shit. Of course, right?
we've
I mean,
left the chains and we've left the whips just for
yeah,
effect, you know?
yeah. So I kind of get it, but I mean, at some point, like 170 years ago, and then, like, would we extend this to like the 16th century and the 17th century and the 15th and Roman times and Greek, ancient time? I mean,
Yeah, I just don't I also just feel like this urge to sanitize and wipe clean and have no
record. Yeah.
oh, let's tear down all the statues and we can't, the South can't have an identity apart from slavery. And it's just this obsession with slavery, which occurred everywhere in the world among all races at all times. Why is this so fucking special? I'm sorry, I'm so sick of it. Like I
Yeah.
used to care more, but I'm so tired of it being shoved down my throat. This is a building. If you go over into the Arab world, are there not buildings there where white slaves were kept? Do those need to be emptied out and like a plaque put there and only white slavery conditions be emulated in a museum way for people to go and go, oh, white slavery was so awful? Like, can we just agree that slavery is wrong and fucking get past it? We've our all colors experienced it. I'm just sick of it. It is not the major thing of our country. It is not the major thing of our country. Anyway, let's hear what else he has to say.
History, Southern hospitality, and stay a night or two. Cool spot, way better than a hotel. Maybe you're thinking, okay, maybe this will give people insight on how enslaved people had to live, their living conditions. No, not at all. Clawfoot tub, running water,
I don't
tile,
stay in slavery
nice
living
lighting
conditions.
fixtures, water, towels, dresser. The history of slavery in this country is constantly denied, and now it's being mocked by being turned into a luxurious vacation spot.
It's shoved down our throats every time we turn around. And everything that happens in the world, every inequality is blamed on white people and slavery. And like the guy did with the white people who pay their kids car insurance don't realize what a leg up that's giving them. I think we do.
That's why we do it.
And I think Black people do it too. I have Black friends I went to high school with who had way more of that than I didn't have any. They had a lot more of that than I did. They didn't have jobs. They got straight A's and didn't have jobs and did sports and went to Stanford, like
does Michael
mostly
Jordan
because
help
they were
his kids?
Right. I mean, come on. Oh, what just happened? I think I just stopped it prematurely and then it went. Anyway, so you get the idea. I get what you're saying. I get that he's having an emotional reaction. And I get what you're saying. But I think if you do take a step back and you go, well, slavery was everywhere. So where does this stop? What really does need to happen to finally put an end to this? I feel like we got there and now it's worse than ever. And all you're doing at this point is it's just nonstop. And it's wrong. And it's causing people to hate each other.
And it has nothing to do with the current civilization. We are not keeping slaves. Black people are not enslaved in America. Some people are in Africa. There's still slavery in Africa.
There might be some Filipino slaves here in the basements. Actually, there are
sex traffic. Yeah, there are sex traffic people.
There's some creepy
everywhere
shit going on with some Asian sex slave stuff.
Yeah, sex traffic is real. Slavery is still real. But what I'm saying is it's not certainly, at what point I agree. Yeah, I agree.
I'm just sick of it. And then, of course, what do they do when they see something that offends them? They go all online and make a big stink about it. And Airbnb took the listing down. And I mean, the whole thing, now no one gets to stay in this little shack.
I think I'd have less of a problem with this whole issue if the full context was brought to light, where we said, hey, Africans sold Africans into slavery. Africans held slaves for over 1,000 years. There's still slavery in Africa. There were white slaves transported all over the world. We've had slavery from time immemorial. The exception in human history to our record of human slavery and bondage and feudalism was the last 100, 200 years, where we've amazingly liberated ourselves from this.
And it's 100, 150 years of slavery
out of hundreds of thousands of years. Yeah. And here, this amazing time we live in, where a vast majority of the world is actually liberated from slavery, and we can talk about it. Let's go back and just unequivocally talk about how awful slavery is, and talk about its manifestations today in terms of the current government and our current regime and the current, trying to not literally enslave us, but what's taxation? What's forcing someone to take a vaccine? All the ways in which the state now is, or trying to suppress free speech or whatever. All the ways in which the state is now impeding our own liberty, as opposed to where we were a certain period ago, and celebrate that and talk about that in its full context of human civilization. Not just, okay, there's African slavery in the United States, and it was an institution for several hundred years. Well, it was an institution in Africa. It was an institution in the Middle East. It was an institution everywhere, and the West outlawed it.
Yeah.
Before Africa outlawed it.
Yeah, it is funny that here we are in the greatest time for freedom and civil rights and human just respect for human life ever in the history of mankind. And we have this sliver of time that we're in, and it's that time this guy's shitting on. All this freedom has created a situation where obviously Brad of the main plantation house, some gay dude can renovate his plantation and turn it into a hotel and rent it out to people on the internet and, have this little thriving business in order to live in this beautiful house in this beautiful spot. And he's going to shit on that because it's just not good enough for him. I feel like people like that, down deep in their heart, their end game is white slavery or elimination, because otherwise they're just going to keep hammering everything a white person does and wanting to take our money for reparations and it's gone too fucking far. It is now becoming oppressive and it feels really anti-white, and I'm sick of it. But yeah, he's got no gratitude for living in this amazing time. I do. And I'm worried we're losing it. I'm worried we're losing our freedoms all the time.
That's what I was saying. Yeah. Like the focus should be on how are we losing our freedom and moving towards an institution of slavery.
Right.
All of us, not just,
you will own nothing and you will be happy.
Yeah. The World Economic Forum is literally telling you'll own nothing.
Yeah.
There are regimes, this Chinese regime or the socialist regimes all over the world that don't allow
the Chinese property, who are getting their organs taken out of them and sold, and the concentration camps over there. What about that?
Yeah.
He's not interested in talking about that. He wants to shit on some American gay couple that redid a plantation.
Or the fatwa on Salman Rushdie, that the Iranians are literally trying to kill a guy for, speaking about Islam. I mean, we have all these instances of actual oppression still going on that are crude and evil violations of our rights as individuals. And that's what we should all be focusing on now.
Yes.
And putting that history in that context of, the founding fathers had to fight a war to liberate themselves from the British monarchy. I mean, before they could liberate a slave, you have to liberate yourself.
Right.
So this, I'm tired of this stupid, superficial history.
I agree. The thing to say to these people is, how about we focus on what happened to Salman Rushdie, and we focus on what happened to Alex Berenson, who was a guy who was doing COVID news and got kicked off Twitter at the behest of the federal government. And I've seen the memo about it. It exists. It is a fact that the federal government told Twitter to remove him, and they did. So that's just true. Let's talk about that.
We have a federal government suppressing freedom of speech and freedom of thought.
Let's talk about the WEF and their their attack on farming and the food supply. So, if we could get that guy on our side, maybe he'd make some TikToks that might actually help somebody keep their freedom, right?
Yeah.
No, he's just obsessed with the past and his own skin color. Ugh. These lefties. So anyway, that's been my Twitter. My Twitter life is commenting on this stuff. And it looks like I've opened up a whole can of worms. I'm not the kind of I've stayed off Twitter because I don't like that kind of conflict. I get stressed out at being insulted and having to reply. I don't find it fun. I know some people find it fun. And I could just put my comedian hat on and be a real dick, but it just it doesn't feel like me, and it's not really the way I want to be. Although I do like doing it a little bit, but I don't know. 200 Twitters about how I'm a jerk. What do people do? Just ignore it?
I'm not a jerk.
I'm not. How dare you?
I'm a nice guy.
I really care about those kids. Michael Malice is sort of the king troll who loves to just be over there responding to people like that and get something out of it. Yeah, I don't really. So it just feels like a waste of time. But okay, so I think I'll stop commenting on people's tweets. But I'm gonna I want to get back into my bubble. So hopefully I can do that. And speaking of online people who hate us, I just want everyone to know that I'm going to be going onto YouTube and deleting probably the first, 80 podcasts, because I just got a strike on my YouTube channel for a really old podcast. And it's my second strike. And the first one happened in the same way. Suddenly there was this old podcast that now in today's context is problematic.
The grievance archaeologists have gone through your material.
It's crazy. The AI, I guess, is just like continues to run and look for what's now considered off limits. And so I got tagged. And if I get one more strike, I lose my whole channel. So I'm going to just go on there and delete all that stuff. And I'm probably going to start like a Rumble or an Odyssey or something, and just for the podcast, and upload all those old episodes onto some free platform. But they're getting off YouTube because I'm just not going to let them do this to me. I'm going to try to prevent it. So that's a little bit of administrative advice. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about today was the Mar-a-Lago raid. I know it happened. Everyone's been talking about it. I believe that it will end in an indictment. I think that's obviously what they're trying to do. And it's a fishing expedition. And I don't think it's fair. I think it's actually kind of like another escalation in our little civil war that we're sort of having, the cold civil war we're having. And, I'm not even that concerned about it. I kind of feel like, yep, of course, we're going down the steps to civil war. And it's just inevitable, it seems to me, that they're not going to back off. So they're just going to keep going until we stop them.
Well, it's obviously an unprecedented escalation, the way in which this took place. And everyone has been through that a million times, as over the last week since this came out. We obviously know that this is an unprecedented intrusion, violation of rights. Out of context, of course, whoa, they had a warrant and blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? Every president keeps materials and has classified documents, whatever. Obama had millions of them. Hillary had a whole email server. There's hundreds of examples of this kind that never resulted in this kind of Gestapo tactic. So this raid was obviously meant to achieve a certain purpose. It's an intimidation tactic. I think what's really going on is that I want to just say a couple things about this. One is for the deep state, let's call it, the permanent Washington bureaucracy, to be this hysterical about the prospects of a second Trump presidency. What this tells me is that what they really fear is Trump being in office without fear of having to be reelected, because he'll have a second term and he can't run again. So he'll be completely shorn of any sort of, obligations, so to speak, to worry about reelection. And he'll be sort of a loose cannon. And I think what this could mean is
Trump will be a loose cannon. Never.
And when you think about the release of files, the declassification of files, the potential breakup of the deep state, winding down military operations around the world, the end to these gravy trains, exposure of these gravy trains that exist within the deep state in terms of funding of not only just black ops and intelligence and military, but all the ways in which these pipelines of cash flow to various constituencies. This could all be sort of upended by someone who has no fear of retribution, because he doesn't have to worry about reelection. So imagine what he could do in terms of dismantling, or at least taking a big shot at the permanent bureaucracy in DC. And so this has to frighten them, and they have to do, and they haven't had this. They haven't had someone like this in power for at least 50 years.
Do you think Reagan was kind of like this though, or no?
No, I don't. I think to some extent,
because he was a bit of an outsider, being an actor and, coming up through the governorship of California.
But the one thing he didn't threaten was the deep state. He had the Bushes and that cabal as his vice president. Bush is deeply tied into the Central Intelligence Agency.
Maybe
he was a
he
CIA
did that
agent
on purpose to, I mean, it's pretty dangerous to threaten the deep state.
Well, the second thing I wanted to say about this, and in this regard, is that this, anyone that's surprised over these like sort of like Gestapo tactics, should realize that this deep state has been there since the 1950s at least, which is a whole nother podcast and topic. But this really, the extent of these types of tactics operating against politicians, operating to manipulate the public, the media, elections, to silence critics. This has been going on since the 50s. Read about the Dulles brothers, read about the formation of the CIA in the late 40s. And, the assassination of John F. Kennedy was yet one example of someone who
Martin Luther
moderately stood against the deep state and threatened the CIA. And so they've been doing this type of stuff for a long time. And it's only recently, particularly with, the movement that Trump has created and the exposure and sort of the waking up of people to these kinds of tactics now, that's resulted in people saying, whoa, wait a second. Because if you think about it, in the 60s, particularly 50s and 60s, the deep state was primarily on the side of, the defense establishment, the oil companies, sort of like corporations. And who was then fighting for free speech and against the man? It was the left. The left suddenly wanted free speech, and they were attacking institutions. And the deep state at that time, and including the media, the Washington Post, the New York Times, et al., were, pressed up against the left at that time. And when this all changed, when now the deep state has really, the right, in effect, in this Trump movement has turned against this establishment and is saying, well, wait a second, we don't need $1 trillion military. We don't need to be the global policeman. Mm-hmm. And suddenly, we don't need, and remember, Reagan was a big, globalist sort of cheerleader for, US hegemony and pressing American power.
There was also the Soviet thing going on.
Yeah, there was a Soviet Union. But since that's gone now, and we're all sitting here saying there's no Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Like who's the
Why
threat?
Do we have military in Europe? Why do we have that?
Well, that threatens that whole establishment now. And so the whole thing has changed is what I'm saying. And now, since the deep state is turning on the right, this sort of like MAGA movement or whatever you want to call it, the new right, now we're saying, wait a second, we're being suppressed. We believe in free speech. Like what happened to our civil liberties? Yeah. And now we're seeing that. And who's in charge of it? The left. The left and the neocons and the Hillary Clinton types, the globalists, they're all sort of
it's together. Not just the left, because it is the neocons and the old conservatives and
Liz Cheney.
Yeah.
And Bush and Karl Rove and people like that. I mean,
did you see Cheney's commercial supporting his daughter? And
no, I heard about it. She's going to lose. She's like only got a 5% chance of winning.
She is going to, of course she's going to, she should. I couldn't believe when she won the last time. I couldn't believe it. And, Romney came out in support of her. And I can't believe he won his reelection recently. Like, how is this even possible that these people keep winning? I hope she loses. She's been way too in the face of the base. I think she will lose, but I think that she agreed to do that in exchange for something. So she's going to end up with some position of power that she's going to be granted by that cabal, of course. And they have power, so they can do that. She doesn't need to win an election to have power.
No, she'll be installed. If they win again, she'll be installed as a assistant secretary of state or some she's going to
be in the State Department, or she's going to be the VP candidate in 2024 or like something.
But I also wanted to follow up with this and just say, these tactics that we're seeing, we have to keep in mind that this is what empires do. Like we talked about this at one point where, when the Patriots kicked the English out of Boston and the English evacuated Boston in 1776, 3 months later, the biggest armada and naval history came
showed up at the door.
sailing into New York Harbor.
Right.
And, like you blow up one Death Star and Darth Vader creates another one. So this is what empires do throughout human history. And I think we have to realize that we're in a fight, we're in a battle. It's now turned on us.
Yeah.
Because we oppose this power structure. And we're in the sort of the same position as maybe the founding fathers were in fighting the biggest empire
right.
On Earth. And at this point, I am thinking completely tactically. I'm not really thinking philosophically as much. I mean, you're always thinking philosophically, but at this point, when you're in the midst of a war like World War II or whatever, or the American War for Independence or whatever, you've got to think about, like, how do we win? How do we get to the next stage? And that means tactics. And that's not only like demonstrating and doing everything lawfully you can to replace rhinos and get good people in power. It's boycotting bad businesses and going on Twitter, whatever you can do. It's writing, it's getting involved locally with,
I think everyone has to
governor
get
and AG
locally.
Races and DA races and just everywhere.
Like, for example, here in LA, people did this recall of the DA, the Soros DA, and there were a lot of people that want him out. I mean, crime is soaring in Los Angeles. It's horrible being there. I know so many people leaving just because it's so unsafe to live there that they can't live there anymore. They just can't do it. And it doesn't matter what neighborhood you're in. You can't get away from it. Crime is so bad. And so they did this big recall. They got 700,000 plus signatures, and they only needed 500 something. And of course, the deep state of LA, whatever that is, they want that guy in. 27% of the signatures were ruled invalid. That's a huge percent.
Wow.
And that's what they needed in order to make the whole thing fall apart. And 27%. And I doubt the people pulling in the signatures are that stupid that they didn't check for duplicate names and stuff like that. Like, they said a lot of it was duplicate names. And then, of course, they didn't let anybody monitor the process of elimination.
Wow.
And
that's
so
third world.
It's totally third world. But okay, so what do? You live in LA, you're 700,000 people, show up at the freaking door, How come you can't now get all those people on the street to say, this is bullshit, we want you out? And I think they could do it if they just did that, if there was somebody to rally them together to do a massive protest. I don't know if you saw this, but in Arizona, there was this little protest that it's so funny how the media frames it. They called it an armed protest outside the FBI office.
Yeah.
Did you hear about that?
Yeah.
So if you look it up, one guy had a gun. One guy had was carrying a gun like he can lawfully do. One guy. And then I heard too on the news that there was a Confederate flag. And I looked at the pictures. I didn't see one. If there was one, it was one, and like everybody else is carrying American flags. And the way that they frame it is that, like, a bunch of Southern redneck, white supremacist, black hating bigots showed up at the FBI office carrying guns. They're definitely trying to paint us as the terrorists.
In this situation, though, neutrality is really not an option.
No, it's not.
This is like, it doesn't really matter right now, the nuances of some of these political discussions.
Well, but do you think showing up at an FBI office armed is good?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I think any sort of demonstration at this point is completely warranted, justified, and should be encouraged. I think we should have like a 1 million man Patriot March on Washington, D.C.
If you did that, all those people would be arrested and thrown in prison.
Not 1 million. I'm saying like 2 million.
The whole
people,
J6 thing was designed to chill our feeling like we can actually voice our opinions. And it's worked. I mean, I'm definitely, since the J6 thing, I am way more cautious about what I say online and how I say it. And I would hesitate to go to a generalized rally like that, because I would know that I would then end up targeted if not enough people showed up.
Right.
And I could end up arrested and in prison just for being upset about what's going on with the deep state. I mean, and those people have been in there 2 years with no trial. So they have too much power. I would not show up at their house. Here's the thing. Antifa doesn't go where they're going to get arrested. Antifa goes to Portland, and they go into the places that they know they have friendly, where the protest should take place is in Florida.
Yeah.
Or in Arizona, where Carrie Lake is, once she makes it into the office of governor.
Go to a red state. And
go to not just a red state, but like a thickly red state where you got somebody with the balls to say, here's what I wonder. Let's say the DOJ puts out a warrant for Trump's arrest. Let's say they indict him. Will DeSantis let him be arrested?
I don't know.
That's a good question. I mean, will Trump want to be arrested, or will he want to resist being arrested? If he gets arrested, he'll be a martyr, but he's an old man. And to put yourself in their hands, look what they did to WikiLeaks guy.
Yeah.
He looks like he's half dead now. He's been in prison and he looks half dead. They have the power to wreck you physically. And then look at what happened to Jeffrey Epstein, assuming he's dead. You know,
this is my point about
would Trump commit suicide?
That, you know, if we say things like, oh my God, they can get us, we all got to go into a shell. That's not going to be effective either. So yeah, but to your point, don't be stupid. I mean, you have to be tactical about how you do that. But that my point is exactly that. Think about how we can push back and make our voices heard, but win, not do stupid things like, oh, let's go into the Capitol, and get arrested.
Yeah.
That's dumb. But at this point, you got to pick a side. This is not going to get any better. It's been getting worse for 50 years. This is, I think, the last gasp of a declining empire.
This is an acceleration for sure. All of this. We're in interesting times, very interesting times. Let me show you this meme that I posted on Facebook. Whenever I see anyone say something like, oh, this was, hey, there was a warrant or whatever, I just put this, I just share that. It's like, yeah, it's not the point, is it? The point is it's being there is no rule of law. Victor Davis Hanson said it. There is no rule of law in Washington, D.C. So you can't go there and protest them. There's no rule of law there.
Right.
I wouldn't go to D.C. I would go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, anyway. we have to start bolstering our own states and our own locales to resist.
I forgot to share this one story when we were talking about the race thing. This will just be the last thing we talk about here. Where is it? There's another race story. This one is kind of incredible, actually.
Just when I thought I was out.
Just when you thought we were done talking about race,
they pulled me back in.
Talking about it. Minneapolis Teachers Union agreement stipulates white teachers be laid off first, regardless of seniority. Can you believe that? So what it is if they do layoffs, they would skip over people who are underrepresented, as they say, Black people. Or I suppose if you're Hispanic, you might get away with that too.
Underrepresented. Yeah. What does that mean? I love that term. That's so Orwellian.
It is. So obviously this is totally illegal. I mean, it's completely illegal. It's against the explicit Constitution. So it would
be against union rules too. Like, what union would allow this?
Teachers are the worst. I'm starting like this whole teachers are heroes stuff. A good teacher is gold. But the vast majority of teachers are freaking nuts.
Yeah.
And they are the worst kind of people. Yeah, right.
Well, anything we can do to accelerate the demise of the public educational system is tactically in our interest.
Yeah.
So maybe if you have more policies like that and teachers keep leaving the public school system and figure out ways to crash the public school system.
I don't know how you crash it when it's just paid for out of your pocket.
Right. Starve it of funding.
Well, that's how that's what you have to do.
Funding.
But how do you have to do that? Vote against funding. I mean, what I feel like has to happen is local people need to go in and take charge of their public schools, kick out the federal government, stop taking their funds. Like pass a law legislatively, no more federal funds in education, and then let the schools have to freaking figure it out.
And
then the local
pull your
people,
kids out of them.
Well,
obviously,
not everybody can do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. So anyway,
I'm just saying there's no panacea. What I'm saying is anything you can do to starve the public educational system or accelerate its demise, whether it's being in the school board, voting against new funding.
I feel like James Lindsay made a good point about school choice being dangerous because they control the textbooks and they control the licensure. So I do think that more important would be to get with the legislators to do like a bill that prevents licensures from being politicized somehow. And maybe it widens the licensure so that you don't have education department people all the time. You instead, anyone who has educated can be a teacher,
Well, you know what? Go and look up your homeschool laws in your state. Every state is very different. I live in a state that's very good. Like you can pretty much homeschool your kid, just take them out and do your thing. There's a couple of requirements that are really minor, but other states are like, oh, no. You have to go through CRT training and blah, 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 even if you're homeschooling. So like that might be something that's easier, especially if you have Republican legislature, change those rules, change the homeschooling rules.
Even the teacher, the certified teacher, the licensure things and the certified teacher, if you can broaden those so that they're hard to use against people, and then try to cut off the state and the federal government, just try to separate the Department of Education from your local schools somehow, like from your state schools. And then from there, I think people could do a lot. Part of the problem is the funding comes from the federal government and they're so dependent on it that they have to do whatever the federal government says. And then we're locked into this. It really matters who the president is. It matters who's the head of the department, all that BS. So anyway.
That's how communism works.
Yeah. Anything that cuts, like you said, you're in the mode of non-ideology and you're in the mode of tactical. For me, it's one of those threads is anything that decentralizes is positive. Even if I'm not I may be on the fence about that ideologically, I'm for it now. If it's decentralizing, anything that cuts us off from these totalitarians is a good thing. And any effort to do that is a good thing. All right. That's it for the show today. Thanks for joining us, everybody. You can follow me on TikTok at Sunny Lohman. You can follow me on Facebook at Sunny Lohman. On YouTube, we're at House of Sunny, and I'll let you know where I move all those early shows. I don't, sometimes people watch them, but I think, it's more of a current events show at this point anyway. So, I guess what else, where can people find you, Doug? And then we'll
just the Rational Capitalist page on Facebook for now.
I put that in search the other day and it came up nothing. There's nothing by that name. And then I had to go a circular route to find it.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely being throttled. My website's theratcap.com. Yeah. But I'm going to be revamping that site soon. I have a local C4 organization, but that's not really pertinent to this pod. But in addition to that, I just set that up, that local organization I've just set up. I'm going to be revamping my site. So just stay tuned.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Hey, let us know in the comments what you want us to talk about, if anything, and we'll see you next time.
Guaranteed all your money back. Last time, ready?